Hi guys, this is going to be a really short intro video for the parents, and actually I'm not saying anything in here that my students can't hear as well, but I just wanted to give you a heads up on what your children might be seeing in this lesson, and if you're there and you're helping them, how you can help them be even more successful. So the first thing I want everyone to know is that for the next few lessons, I'm going to be working with really just 2 or 3 basic materials. I'm going to be working with paper, and it can be any paper. It can be a sketchbook if you have it. It can be copy or printer paper, cardstock, newspaper if you want to draw on it with a Sharpie that's dark enough to see it, and then something to draw with. I actually still to this day prefer to draw with a number 2 pencil and a Ticonderoga for the win. That's my favorite. But if you have a set of graphic drawing pencils at home, you can use those. But if you are using those, I would say stick to HB, which is basically a number 2 pencil, at least for this lesson. And we may have a lesson just on pencils, because I haven't done one this year where we really talked to all the students about pencils, so that might be coming up. But for right now, if you're using a fancy drawing set, use HB. If not, just a regular number 2 pencil, which is pretty much any pencil out there in the world that's not in a fancy drawing set. So that's our pencil, any paper. And then if your pencil ends up looking, oh, I don't have one here. If they've used all their eraser up on their pencil, it would be really helpful if you have a hand eraser to use. The pink ones are fine. My personal favorite are the white ones. Kneaded erasers are not good for this. They kind of smear graphite around. If you don't know what a kneaded eraser is, we can talk about that later. There's the squishy ones that are gray. Those are better for charcoal. So, but a pink one and a white one is great. So those are our materials. We're going to be doing a lot of drawing lessons, like I said, at least for the next several lessons, because I know everybody has these materials, and we don't have access at your home to this whole art studio. That's number 1. Number 2, you may hear me use some terms that maybe aren't traditional elementary and preschool art terms. Part of that is because I'm not a traditional elementary or a preschool art teacher. I'm a Montessori teacher. So you may hear some Montessori language here, and if you've had art classes in the past, you might go, why is she saying that? Well, that's why part of it. The other part of it is I use some drawing terms with the kids that I teach every year, and they had this lesson at the beginning of the year, so some of them might have forgotten some of these terms, but I use a system based on the patterns of nature from some teachings from permaculture. And that goes back to my training that I did with the tracking project many years ago. So you might hear me say, we're going to use the wave pattern here, or the circle pattern, or the lobe pattern, or the scatter pattern, or the branching pattern. These are all patterns that occur in nature universally. They're all in our bodies. They're all out. If you take a nature walk, you can see them. So I use that as a bridge whenever I'm trying to teach the children more realistic forms of drawing, so that they can start to notice those patterns in the world around them, both to understand how everything is really like everything else in a lot of ways, but also how to recreate them in their art and make their art really reflect what they see in nature. So for instance, we're going to be doing a lesson on drawing cardinals, since all the spring birds are out. And we're going to be using the wave pattern. That's really the only pattern I'm going to bring up in this lesson, but you will hear more going forward. And then I also tend to use shapes. So circles, triangles, squares, ovals versus ellipses, spheres, cubes, rectangular based prisms. That'll be more elementary level when we start trying to make things look more three-dimensional. But so this coming lesson I'm going to show after this video is going to just use circles and squares. And I do that again so that we have a base and the kids are building something out of shapes they already understand and know how to draw. Third, I just want to talk about really briefly about my number one art rule in the art studio, which is to be brave and what that means. It doesn't mean that, like, if they make a mistake and they're really sad about it, that they can't be sad. It means that we understand that sometimes the things we make as we draw don't turn out the way we want, and we can be brave about that, and we can be sad and then move on and keep going. So the idea of being brave is that we understand that there are some disappointments as we learn to draw and paint and learn to do these things, because it's almost necessary. I tell the kids that if I hadn't made all the mistakes I've made in my life while I make art, while I learn to make new types of art, while I learn to use new materials, while I learn to draw and paint new things, then my art would never have gotten better, because our mistakes show us what we need to learn next. So if your child is feeling disappointed, that disappointment is totally okay, but encourage them and say, hey, that mistake is something that we can learn from. What can we see in this that you don't like? By seeing what you don't like, you can recognize it and try to not do that the next time. Honestly, it's a real great way to look at all mistakes in life. So I like to think of a lot of the things that we learn in art are things that we can apply outside of the dynamics of making art to just the dynamics of living life in this crazy, crazy world. I think that's it. I'm going to stop this video and start the video with the children. And I hope if you sit down and draw with your kids that you have a really good time, and that you're brave, that you make brave art with me. And I miss you guys. I miss everybody. All right. Bye.